Back in 2022, the term Metaverse was utterly inescapable. Web3 was the next big thing. Obviously, as someone involved with virtual reality, there were a few interesting developments from that era that intrigued me. But most of the Web3 initiatives from around that time just felt very hollow. I often thought to myself, what's the point of this? Who is this for? How does this benefit anyone? There were so many failed metaverse projects, and I think the most egregious part of it was the rampant commercialization of this new frontier of the internet. Like, why would anyone want to buy virtual property? One of the perks of the digital world is that it's a limitless expanse where anyone can do anything, oftentimes for free. To try and make it into a finite resource just to extract some financial gain didn't land well with me. One video has been living rent-free in my head for literal years at this point. I attended the world's first Metaverse Fashion Week by Gloria Gao. I'll get to the content of the video itself in just a moment, but as I was searching for it, I came across article after article about the future of the internet as described by journalists in 2022. It's actually remarkable how poorly all of this has aged in just a few years. Most of the media was extremely uncritical of all things Web3. We're in the beginning stages of an innovative revolution. The metaverse is the Web3 next wave, changing the way that we'll work, socialize, play video games, and interact. We'll soon see businesses started, office buildings constructed, meetings held for remote workers, and job interviews conducted in virtual reality. Andrew Kygel, CEO of Tokens.com, an early real estate investor in virtual reality, recently made headlines with his company's purchase of real estate in the fashion district of Decentraland, paying around $2.5 million for the space. In the metaverse, you can purchase NFTs, develop buildings, play video games, attend concerts and events, and create businesses. It's a way to start over. People who want to live virtually close to Snoop Dogg in the sandbox shelled out nearly $500,000 for the privilege and access to the rapper, his parties, and his concerts. New York-based real estate developer Republic Realm paid about the equivalent to $913,228 for 259 parcels of Decentraland, with the goal of turning it into a virtual shopping district. The reporting surrounding the first Metaverse Fashion Week was similarly delusional. It's incredibly interesting to see how the upcoming completely virtual Metaverse Fashion Week will play out and how virtual reality will revolutionize the fashion industry as we know it. You can wear virtual garments on Snapchat or Zoom meetings, or pose with them for photos or social media feeds. You can show up to a work meeting with a black tie dress when in real life it's just a t-shirt. Or post a picture on Instagram of a luxury jacket that was never touched in real life. Virtual fashion is being sold in a variety of ways, from gaming platforms and digital photos to videos that use augmented reality and even NFTs. Morgan Stanley estimates the virtual fashion market could be worth more than $55 billion by 2030. The user experience might need to improve just a tad to facilitate mass adoption. Just a tad. Well, here we are in the year of 2026 at the time of making this video, and I think it's pretty safe to say that Metaverse Fashion Week revolutionized absolutely nothing. How could that be? Let's go back to Gloria Gao.
Metaverse Fashion Week. Metaverse Fashion. Metaverse Fashion. Metaverse. What is this? Did I get a time zone wrong, or like, what is happening? Okay, I can't find the freaking panel. Someone says the panel event is on the roof. We'll check out the roof. Where's the roof? Oh! Up here. What the fuck did I just watch?
The first Metaverse Fashion Week was a 4-day event taking place in the crypto-driven online platform Decentraland. With featured brands such as Dolce & Gabbana and Dundas, Metaverse Fashion Week was meant to be a high-profile, futuristic glimpse into the innovative Web3 future that we were promised. What we ended up with, however, was an ugly, soulless commercial venture plagued by technical problems and comedically bad visuals. Nearly every event ran late, and even once the shows did get going, they were chock full of glitches. It didn't look much better than Second Life. Not Second Life today, I mean back in 2003. Actually, looking through old screenshots, I think 2003 Second Life might be the winner here. But, you know, the technology was new, we can't be too harsh on them for having a few technical difficulties. I'm sure they got better over time, right? Yeah, I'll just cut right to the chase. I hate this. Hated it back then, still hate it now. I think it's safe to say that Decentraland was always doomed to fail, and Metaverse Fashion Week only made headlines because everyone was trying to get in on the ground floor of the next big thing. But Decentraland wasn't the only company making a splash during this weird era of the internet. For a brief moment in time, it felt like my feed was being dominated by stories of virtual clothes, digital assets that would be displayed on your real body, either via augmented reality or by companies literally photoshopping it onto your photos. My personal reaction to this at the time was mostly one of confusion. I remember thinking to myself that the audience for this had to be extremely small. Most of these products seem to be created with the sole use case of being able to post pictures of yourself wearing expensive outfits to social media without actually owning the clothes. And yet, this service still comes with a price tag. Some of these digital pieces could be bought for just a few bucks, but I found multiple examples of virtual outfits being sold for hundreds or even thousands of dollars for clothes that aren't real. I can't stress this enough. The only upside I can see here is maybe an environmental benefit. Fast fashion is absolutely wreaking havoc on the planet. So I suppose I can see the benefit of being able to indulge in fashion without actually having to create physical clothing. On the other hand, many of these virtual clothing items were also being sold as NFTs, which do carry an environmental cost that is disproportionate to the fact that they're completely useless. But I'm clearly not the only one who was skeptical of these forays into virtual clothing. Metaverse Fashion Week experienced a 76% drop in attendance by its second year, and many of the augmented reality clothing services that I remember from 2022 don't even appear to exist anymore. Those that do have pivoted to more practical applications like virtual dressing rooms or product photos. For the last 4 years or so, I've simply filed away virtual fashion as a pointless industry that will fade from the public consciousness, much the way that every other Web3 project has. And yet, at the same time, am I not wearing virtual fashion right now? Are video game cosmetics considered fashion? Have you worn digital fashion? What even is fashion? Let me tell you, this question sent me down quite a rabbit hole. I think it's safe to say that there is a fashion element to a lot of games and other online social platforms. But where is the line between just using cosmetic items in a game and actual proper fashion? And when did we start caring so much about what the pixels on our screen look like? Humans have been caring about fashion and style for a shockingly long time. The French word for fashion, mode, dates all the way back to the early 1400s, and we can certainly find earlier examples throughout human history of garments being crafted with certain aesthetics in mind. With that in mind, it shouldn't be too surprising that there's been an interest in cosmetics in video games from the earliest days of the medium. I tried to figure out which game was the absolute first to allow some kind of clothing customization, and the earliest example I could find was The Black Onyx, a JRPG from 1984. This game let players pick the style and color of both the hair and clothing for their party members. I can't promise this is truly the first, but it is crazy to get confirmation that we've been dressing up virtual characters for over 40 years. Fighting game franchises such as Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat began including unlockable skins for characters in the early 1990s. These were oftentimes just simple color swaps back then, but the feature has been a mainstay in this genre for decades. The 90s also brought us the first mainstream successful dress-up game with Barbie Fashion Designer. Players were able to create outfits for different events such as weddings or vacations, as well as design their own clothes by selecting different fabric patterns and colors. They could also add accessories like belts and handbags, and they could even print out their outfits to put on their real-world Barbie dolls. The game was a pretty big hit for its time, coming in as the 6th highest-selling PC game of that year. In 1998, pop culture icon and protagonist of the Tomb Raider series, Lara Croft, was rendered wearing clothing items from designers such as Alexander McQueen and Gucci. Does this make Lara the first virtual influencer? She slayed, by the way. As we look into the early 2000s, however, the nature of fashion and gaming quickly began to change. It's almost impossible to talk about cosmetic items in gaming without addressing the elephant in the room. That elephant's name is microtransactions. Microtransactions are a system that allows users to purchase in-game items for real-world money, and can run anywhere from a few cents to hundreds of dollars or more, depending on the game and the item in question. While microtransactions are ubiquitous today, they were more or less absent from gaming until we get to the 2000s. If you were alive in the early 2000s and had at least a passing interest in online games, it's highly likely that MapleStory was on your radar. This free-to-play MMORPG was one of the most popular online games back in its day, ranking as one of the top 10 MMOs in the world by revenue. How did this free online game make so much money? Clothes. Lots and lots of virtual clothes. Now, I am oversimplifying things a bit. MapleStory has historically had issues with locking game progression behind paywalls, which certainly contributed positively to their bottom line. But as someone who did play MapleStory off and on back in its heyday, I can confirm that a ton of players took the plunge and purchased cosmetic items. In fact, by 2010, over 1 million unique players had opened their wallets for MapleStory. That's a lot of people, considering it's a free game otherwise. MapleStory had some unique monetization methods for its time. The majority of paid clothing items came with a 90-day time limit, so while items may only cost a few dollars, players would need to continually purchase them again and again. Nothing was permanent, unless you won it in a gacha. Gacha is short for gachapon, which is a type of vending machine that spits out little capsules, like this. Gachapon machines originated in the 1960s, and they can be found all over the world. While they're known for being particularly popular in Japan, you've probably seen these things in local stores around you no matter where you live. They can offer anything from toys to gumballs or keychains and anything in between. Today, they're probably best known for carrying a selection of random collectible toys, usually belonging to a set. Players will keep throwing their money at them either to try and complete a full set or just to try and score the one toy they were looking for. Because it's random, you'll often find yourself spending more money to get what you want than the toy itself is even worth. In 2004, some genius on the MapleStory team had the bright idea to bring the concept of gachapon into the game, and it changed the industry forever. Players would need to purchase tickets with real money, and they could use it to pull random items from the gachapon machine. Some of these were tied to in-game progression, but you could also win permanent cosmetic items from the gachapon. Of course, many of these cosmetic items were part of a bigger set, so good luck getting your hands on the full collection. Despite the obvious potential for this monetization tactic to become insanely predatory, this did nothing to deter players from participating, which naturally led to the game raking in billions of dollars in revenue. MapleStory was one of the first games I'd ever played that locked essentially all of its stylish cosmetic items behind a paywall, and yet it was also the first game I remember playing where many of the players cared more about how their character looked than their in-game progression. In 2006, Bethesda Game Studios released their latest installment in the Elder Scrolls series, Oblivion. Oblivion was a smash success, winning multiple Game of the Year awards and selling over 3 million copies by January 2027. However, Oblivion also left an interesting and unexpected mark on gaming history with its implementation of downloadable content, or DLC. In April of 2006, Bethesda released the first small paid DLC package for Oblivion. This package contained only a single cosmetic item, exclusive armor for your horse. This package cost about $2 depending on which platform you were purchasing it for. At the time, a lot of players complained about the idea of paying extra money for a simple cosmetic item that held no gameplay value. And yet, despite the criticism, this simple cosmetic item blew up in popularity, with millions of players apparently willing to drop a few dollars to have cool armor for their fake horse. And to be fair, it did look pretty cool. I'm sharing this background with you to show that gamers in particular have long been willing to pay a bit more, or a lot more, for the appearance of their virtual characters. At the end of the day, though, these cosmetic items make up just a small piece of what these expansive worlds have to offer. So what about virtual worlds where appearances actually are the center focus? The early 2000s not only marked a change in the way that video games were beginning to market and sell cosmetic items, but it was also an era where non-gaming oriented platforms were starting to take off. I already referenced it earlier, but it doesn't quite seem fair to compare Decentraland to Second Life. While Decentraland is a hollow, soulless cash grab, Second Life completely changed our collective perspective of what our virtual lives could even be. Launching in June of 2003, Second Life wasn't a game so much as an online world where players can, well, live a second life. Players use in-game tools to build objects and even script said objects to have interactivity, enabling players to create unique experiences and games for one another to enjoy. This kind of community-oriented experience was unique at the time, and Second Life was one of the first online platforms to prioritize user-generated content. Second Life doesn't have a structured adventure for players to follow. Instead, the focus is on exploration and socializing with other users. People have made lifelong friends from Second Life and more than a few marriages, too. The emphasis on user-generated content extends to the cosmetic items too. Not only can users wear clothing items made by other players, but they can purchase these items for real-world money. Second Life has its own in-game economy, which has even enabled people to earn a full-time living from selling their assets to other users. For many residents of Second Life, the appearance of their avatar is the most important aspect of their experience. I can't prove it since this isn't exactly something that anyone is keeping track of, but I have a feeling that Second Life was the first platform where people were making full-time incomes from selling digital clothes. 2003 was a big year for virtual clothing enjoyers. Releasing within just a few months of Second Life was an early social networking site known as Gaia Online. Gaia Online is, at its core, just an anime-themed forum with some flash games users can play to earn in-game currency. This currency is primarily used for the purposes of customizing an avatar, which all players are given to represent themselves on the site. This avatar is effectively the whole point of Gaia Online. Literally millions of dollars have been exchanged for the sole purpose of avatar customization. While Gaia Online doesn't allow users to design and sell their own assets, during its peak, hundreds of thousands of users would come online every single week just to chat and dress up their avatar. Finally, in 2004, we saw the release of IMVU. At its surface, IMVU has a ton of similarities to Second Life. Both platforms allow users to create and sell clothing items and other assets to one another. However, while Second Life prioritizes a deep world filled with nearly limitless potential, IMVU focuses much more heavily on the chatting and social aspect. The IMVU community also has a tendency to be a bit more on the cartoony side when it comes to the popular avatar styles. Despite these differences, IMVU still boasts more than 500,000 individual creators selling assets on their platform, some of whom are also earning a full-time income. With over 100 million registered users, it's safe to say that there has been a ravenous audience for these types of appearance-driven online experiences for a long time. In short, people have had a deep investment in the appearance of their online avatars for over 20 years at this point. It shouldn't surprise us then to see the ways that people engage with virtual fashion today have only amplified. Not only that, but real-world brands are more invested in virtual fashion than ever before, despite the failure of Web3 projects such as Metaverse Fashion Week. As we look at the current state of digital clothing, I think it's worth pointing out a few cultural shifts that have happened since the initial invention and subsequent rise in virtual cosmetics. First, gaming as an industry has absolutely exploded over the past few decades. When the Black Onyx came out in 1984, the video games industry in total generated about $26 billion in revenue. But just 40 years later, in the year 2024, and that number has skyrocketed to $182.7 billion. To put that in perspective, the gaming industry is worth more than the film and music industries combined. With the overall growth in the games industry as a whole, it should be no surprise to hear that virtual clothing has expanded alongside it. Cosmetic items have become a huge pillar of the industry, and this growth shows no sign of stopping. Sales of cosmetic items in video games are projected to drive over $100 billion in annual revenue by 2030. That's a lot of virtual clothes. Not only is it one of the primary revenue streams for many game publishers, but entire communities also form around virtual fit sharing. While this of course remains popular for multiplayer games, even single-player games have communities that revolve around character customization and clothing. Just a couple of months ago, a new bug was discovered in the 2018 title Red Dead Redemption 2 that allows players to unlock tons of clothing items that were previously impossible to wear. There was quite a bit of fanfare about this, with many comments saying that this was the best thing to happen to the game since it was released. Nearly every game with a fan base is almost certain to have a dedicated community of modders adding additional clothing items, regardless of how robust the base game's fashion selection might already be. Gamers across all demographics playing any genre you can think of have consistently demonstrated a ravenous desire for as many fashion options as possible. But we see this hunger for virtual fashion across more than just the AAA gaming space. Today, people spend more time online than ever before. The average daily screen time for all adults age 18 and up is 6 hours and 51 minutes per day. And when we specifically look at young adults between the ages of 18 and 29, that number goes up even higher to 7 hours and 5 minutes per day. With that, our real life and our online life have merged into one. The lines are blurred, and for many people, the way we're perceived online is just as important as the way we're perceived in real life. And for some, their online appearance might be even more important. All of the social platforms I mentioned earlier, such as Second Life, IMVU, or Gaia Online, are still relatively active today. Second Life, and IMVU in particular, still have users designing and selling virtual clothes to one another. However, these virtual worlds have never quite managed to reach their former levels of activity from their peaks over a decade ago. One might expect that this is because audiences have lost their appetite for these types of experiences, but I don't think that's quite accurate. I suspect that the potential audiences for these OG industry titans have been cannibalized by newer, more innovative platforms. The biggest and most inescapable of these is, without a doubt, Roblox. Bear with me as I talk about Roblox here. I have never played Roblox, and I don't really intend to, but it is easily one of, if not the largest metaverse platforms that exist at the moment. If you're somehow unfamiliar, Roblox is, in short, an online gaming platform that allows users to create games for other players to play and enjoy. While this is, on paper, similar to Second Life, the end result looks extremely different. A total departure to past entries in this genre, Roblox avatars tend to have this blocky, low-poly aesthetic. To me, they look like what you might expect if a Minecraft character and IMVU avatar had a baby. And yet, while this art style might not appeal to the older demographics that enjoyed IMVU or Second Life, Roblox utterly dwarfs everything that came before it due to the complete chokehold it has on younger generations. A single user-generated game within Roblox actually holds the world record for the most concurrent players in a game ever, coming in at over 11.5 million users playing at the same time. Not only that, but across the whole platform, Roblox holds the record for the most concurrent users on any platform, with over 47 million users all playing Roblox at once. This record even beats Steam's concurrent player record by over 5 million users. Like its platform predecessors, Roblox has its own in-game economy that runs on the digital currency Robux. Users can create and sell clothing and hair assets to one another, just like Second Life. However, because of the sheer scale of Roblox, real-world brands are now selling virtual versions of their products that can be worn on users' avatars. Zylstra, a professional ballerina from Corona, California, said that she's snagged her avatar some digital duds from Forever 21's and Ralph Lauren's virtual collections. It's important for me to buy these items because avatars are a reflection of who we are or how we want to be perceived in the metaverse, said Zylstra. It sounds crazy, but fashion is a huge deal in online gaming, just as much as it is in the real world. Brands such as Gucci, Tommy Hilfiger, Burberry, Coach, and many, many more have been selling virtual clothing and accessories on Roblox for several years. You might think that this is just a shameless marketing ploy, and you'd be correct. However, it's been surprisingly effective. Despite how strange it might seem to have big-name, real-life brands shilling their products to kids and teens on Roblox, some of these items have been shockingly successful. In September of 2022, supermodel Carly Kloss walked the Carolina Herrera runway wearing a yellow floral gown for their upcoming spring-summer collection. Although the dress itself wouldn't be available to purchase for several months, a digital version of the gown was sold on the Roblox marketplace for about $5. This limited item was available for only 4 hours. In only 1 week, the price of this virtual dress jumped on the resale market to an average value of nearly $2,000. One of these items was actually resold at a whopping $5,000. While it can be difficult to measure the exact attribution of Roblox marketing to real-world sales, a 2023 report from Roblox revealed that 50% of Gen Z users are very or extremely likely to consider a brand in the physical world after trying on the items virtually. Roblox has even experimented with virtual storefronts that allow brands to sell real products. In 2025, Fenty Beauty unveiled a shoppable game within Roblox that took users to a checkout window to buy real physical lip gloss without ever leaving the platform. Nanette Wong, Fenty's VP of Global Brand Marketing, said, "We're merging the physical and digital worlds by offering a first-of-its-kind shopping experience inside the game that brings our brand from Roblox to real life." But it's not just real-life brands finding success in the virtual fashion space. Just like the online platforms of the early 2000s, there are many independent creators making a full-time living and then some by creating and selling items on Roblox. For example, Topcat is a 3-person startup founded by professional 3D modelers that has managed to sell over 1 million items per month on Roblox. Though Topcat had no idea that their venture would turn into a verifiable empire on Roblox, by 2025 they were running 3 separate fashion brands and were publishing at least 1 new item for sale every single day. Philip Batura, managing director of Topcat, said that digital apparel already sells in volumes comparable to physical fashion. The cultural influence is enormous. It deserves recognition as every bit as important as real-world clothes. Rafaela Camara, a gaming and entertainment strategist, shared that gaming platforms like Roblox and Fortnite are digital hangouts where people meet friends, join live events, and craft their identities. Inside these virtual worlds, what you wear is who you are. Skins, avatars, and digital accessories serve the same function as outfits in the physical world: self-expression, belonging, and status. According to a 2025 report from Roblox, Gen Z users in particular have blurred the lines between their online identities and their real-world shopping habits and fashion styles. 84% reported that their real-world style is inspired by their avatar, and 88% said they use digital fashion to preview before buying physical clothing. Roblox isn't the only platform of today that has a thriving virtual economy. You knew it was coming. I'm going to talk about VRChat now. For the uninitiated, VRChat has a surprising amount of overlap with Roblox. It too is an online platform that thrives on user-generated content, allowing players to create worlds, games, and perhaps most importantly, avatars that can be worn by other users. Only this time, the primary user base engages with the platform in virtual reality. If you scroll through the most popular VRChat worlds at any given time, you're likely to spot more than a few avatar worlds in the trending tab. Avatar worlds are entire virtual venues that exist for the sole purpose of letting you try on complete avatars made by other users. Some creators are so prolific that they have dozens of their avatars available for other players to use. These avatars typically come with their own litany of customization options, allowing players to personalize them by swapping out clothes, accessories, hairstyles, and textures. While these avatars are free, many of them have paid versions that users can purchase online that come with even more features and accessories. But using pre-made avatars created by other users is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the depth of creativity that can be found on VRChat. VRChat is unique to the other platforms we've covered in that you can create and upload pretty much anything you want. Avatars don't necessarily need to be built off of predefined bases determined by the platform itself. Additionally, VRChat also doesn't currently support a way to simply add clothing to your avatar in-game, so the majority of avatar customization happens elsewhere in Blender and Unity. This limitation has led to VRChat's community creating and supporting a wide variety of avatars. These creations can go completely outside the confines of what one might expect in a game like this, with players creating non-humanoid creatures, mind-bending artworks, or even entire cinematic experiences as avatars. That being said, the majority of players do still wind up using avatars that are at least vaguely human-ish, probably because you don't want to sit and talk with your friends while being a walking cinematic experience. Compared to other similar platforms, VRChat doesn't have very strong support for buying and using customization options in-game. As a result, VRChat has less of an in-game economy and more of an out-game economy, living on a network of independent websites that players use to list, advertise, and purchase cosmetics and avatars. Some of these sites, such as Gumroad, Payhip, or Booth, are not explicitly created with VRChat as the sole focus, even if a large chunk of the user base conducts their business there. However, VRChat has such a robust economy that some users have banded together to create entirely new sites for users to sell their products that were built from the ground up with VRChat in mind. This community wouldn't be going through the trouble of creating this robust infrastructure for making and selling catgirls if our in-game appearances weren't so important to us. In a study focusing on the relationships between users and their VRChat avatars, It was noted that users are oftentimes crafting an entire alternate identity when they're assembling their avatars. The study says it is important to note that the personalities they express when they use their avatars for social activities are very different from those they express in real life. As a matter of fact, personalized dressing is the primary preference of users. It is not only possible to control the clothes an individual wears in virtual worlds, but they can also control their shape, form, species, size, etc. Virtual world fashion designers are capable of creating fantastic designs without regard to cost, fit, or gravity. This really highlights why I've come to understand this movement as something truly special, and why I think this burgeoning industry deserves to be treated with respect instead of just throwing it in the trash along with the rest of Web3. It is disappointing that terms like virtual fashion, digital clothing, and wearables are inextricably entangled with NFTs. Decentraland and other crypto-driven platforms like The Sandbox preached about decentralization as a key selling point for their online ecosystems, while the primary goal of engaging with these platforms has always been the goal of making a profit, with the majority of users hoping and praying that their non-fungible, low-poly baseball caps will be worth millions of dollars someday. But virtual fashion has been a part of human creativity and expression for literal decades at this point, and I can only see it continuing to grow. And yes, there is certainly money to be made in this industry. However, the digital world gives artists unique perks that significantly lower the barrier to entry if they do want to dip their toes into the world of designing clothing. It can cost anywhere from $15,000 to $50,000 US to launch an independent fashion brand, and that's just getting started. If you've ever tried sewing your own clothes, you know that this is a hugely time-consuming endeavor. Not to mention, margins can be incredibly thin depending on the type of materials you choose to use. And if you want to outsource production, well, that can easily rack up to tens of thousands of dollars as well. If you're running a one-man show, then it's even more challenging, as you have to make every single item for sale by hand. Then you'll need to pack and ship these items whenever you do make a sale, and manage customer service yourself too. While it's not impossible, it's certainly out of reach for the majority of artists and designers. In the world of digital distribution, the problem of logistics is reduced to simply hosting your file on one of the many platforms that exist purely to help you sell your art. Of course, the skill set required to 3D model virtual clothing is obviously different than creating clothing in real life. But for artists that have an interest in fashion, designing clothes for these online platforms is significantly more accessible than traditional methods. Solo artists can get their creations in the hands of hundreds of thousands of people without having to mail a single package. Not only that, but artists can create outfits that would be physically impossible to construct in the physical world. Users will also wear things virtually that they might never dare to do in real life. This is my virtual alter ego. I don't dress remotely like this in reality, and I certainly don't look anything like this either, obviously. This disconnect gives us the freedom to explore new looks that we'd never touch if we didn't have access to virtual spaces. And these virtual spaces have only become more important to us over time. For better or worse, this is where many people live now. It's where we hang out after work, we see shows here on the weekends, and we craft new identities for ourselves that are completely detached from our real selves. Kids hang out with their friends in Roblox, and they want to look cool while they do it. The real world has been getting worse, but the virtual world has gotten better. It's more popular, more immersive, and more freeing than ever before. Especially as more and more people tire of social media, I think we'll see it becoming even more mainstream to adopt virtual personas that let them escape the unpleasant realities surrounding us in our day-to-day. Is that a good thing? Let's just say it's questionable. However, as long as we have platforms that allow people to wear virtual fashion, I think it's safe to say that people will be unleashing their creativity through this medium for many years to come. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into this hyper-specific topic. It's been on my mind a lot as I'm probably the world's biggest NFT hater, but I've also spent a really horrifying amount of money on digital clothes over the years. I would also love to see a world in which the term metaverse was no longer completely tainted by crypto bros and Mark Zuckerberg. There will always be a lot of rampant commercialization of these online platforms, but there's also a shocking amount of genuine human ingenuity that can be found if you go past the flashy headlines of $5,000 Roblox dresses. If you made it this far, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me ramble. This channel is still very fresh, and we're going to be covering a wide array of topics regarding virtual worlds, immersive experiences, futurism, and the way we interact with one another online. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, maybe consider sticking around? Or don't? It's up to you. I'm not your mom. Anyways, thanks again, and we'll see you next time.